The clock is ticking, facing intense pressure from the US to change its mind. South Korea has until the stroke of midnight to decide whether to retract its earlier decision to terminate an intel sharing pact with Japan. The US point man on North Korea tells South Korean lawmakers that Seoul should pay more for the US troop presence on the peninsula. Stephen Biegun says such a gesture would renew and rejuvenate the alliance. Plus, the OECD cut South Korea's growth outlook for this year yet again. In our forecast, the South Korean economy will only grow 2% in 2019. US Defense Secretary Mark Esper has reiterated the US will continue to try and resolve the issue over Seoul and Tokyo's soon-to-be-terminated military intelligence sharing pact. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Esper called on South Korea and Japan to resolve the GSOMIA issue, reaffirming Washington's position on the need to maintain it. He says he understands the historical issue that sparked the conflict, but stressed the greater concern is North Korea and China. If Seoul doesn't retract its decision on GSOMIA, the deal will lapse at the stroke of midnight tonight. Esper also argued that it's not unfair to ask for countries that are capable to pay more for American troops. The US is reportedly asking Seoul for $5 billion for defense cost sharing, a more than five-fold increase from this year. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang held a phone conversation with US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Thursday evening local time to discuss issues of mutual interest. According to Seoul's Foreign Ministry, they discussed sharing the cost of stationing US troops here, as well as GSOMIA. Seoul's military intel sharing pact with Japan is due to expire. Kang and Pompeo vowed continued communication at various levels, while agreed as well to schedule a date to meet for in-depth discussions. A top US official says he expects the defense cost-sharing negotiations to be a grind, unlike the quick deals that have been sealed in years gone by. This was the opinion of Washington's special envoy to North Korea, Stephen Biegun, who expressed his feelings Thursday during a meeting with floor leaders from South Korea's National Assembly, who are currently in Washington. He reportedly said the alliance should be shored up, but said for this, it's inevitable South Korea will have to pay more for US troops on the peninsula. Main opposition Liberty Korea Party floor leader Na Kyung-won said Biegun used the words such as rejuvenation and renewal when describing the alliance. She said she thinks that means Washington views the cost-sharing issue as part of a wider framework. Now, in other news, the OECD has cut its growth outlook for South Korea's economy this year to 2%. And it did so citing a slowdown in global trade, among other things. Lee-Seung-jae with the details.
The OECD on Thursday downgraded its growth outlook for South Korea's economy for this year to 2% amid a slowdown in global trade. The organization's latest outlook represented a drop from its previous forecast of 2.1% in September. The report said economic growth will remain subdued in South Korea as the global slowdown and trade tensions hold back exports, while high uncertainty weighs on investment. The OECD also said a gradual recovery in global demand for semiconductors and expansionary fiscal policy will support the economy. Currently, semiconductors account for nearly a fifth of South Korea's exports. The OECD also expects the Bank of Korea to further ease monetary policy in 2020, as headline inflation will remain below the 2% inflation target. This comes as the BOK cut its benchmark interest rate by a quarter percentage point to 1.25% in October, a low not seen since June 2016. Despite the cut in South Korea's growth outlook, the OECD left its outlook for 2020 unchanged, predicting the economy will grow to 2.3%. Lee-Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, it's hardly bombshell news, but North Korea has made it official at least. It will not be sending any ranking official next week to the special ASEAN summits in Busan. The regime's state-run media reported Thursday that despite the invitation sent earlier this month by President Moon Jae-in to the regime's leader Kim Jong-un, North Korea sees no reason to attend. The South Korean presidential office said it's extremely regrettable that Kim is unable to join the 10 ASEAN leaders since the meetings are focused primarily on peace and prosperity. In a message to reporters, the top office said it will continue to pursue peace on the Korean peninsula. The ASEAN-Korea Commemorative Summit will begin, as we just heard, in Busan early next week. We'll be bringing you comprehensive coverage of that here on Arirang TV. Ahead of that, though, experts from the academic world and from the political sphere gathered in Seoul on Thursday to discuss how the participating nations can boost cooperation with one another. Our Kim Hye-sang has highlights from that session.
Politicians and academics from Korea and ASEAN member countries gathered in Seoul on Thursday for a conference on the theme of peace and co-prosperity in Asia.
Peace is something that Korea strongly desires, as the Korean peninsula remains divided despite the end of the Cold War. Peace is also valued by ASEAN member states, which went through long periods of war and foreign interference. We believe that we can closely cooperate for peace in Asia.
All 10 ASEAN countries have diplomatic ties with North Korea, meaning South Korea and ASEAN can work together to contribute to North Korea's denuclearization and pull the North into the East Asian community. The conference also discussed co-prosperity. South Korea's economic achievement and technological advances are expected to create synergy with ASEAN, which has an economic growth rate of 5% a year and a population of 640 million people. Trade has increased 20-fold between South Korea and ASEAN in the last 30 years, and the RCEP mega trade deal is expected to further help boost trade at a time of increasing uncertainty and rising trade protectionism around the world. Participants also share their insight on the Moon administration's new Southern policy, including areas that can be improved. Of the 3 pillars of people, peace, and prosperity, participants said coming up with detailed policies to boost people-to-people exchanges is critical.
ASEAN is in the spotlight, caught between China's Belt and Road Initiative and the United States' Indo-Pacific policy. But they do not want to be at the center of a geopolitical fight. Korea, as a middle power country, needs to boost trust and find commonality with ASEAN through cultural exchanges and educational exchanges for economic cooperation in the long run.
Student exchanges, continuing tourism, and establishing research centers dedicated to the understanding of Korea-ASEAN relations were pointed out as ways to work together. To boost cooperation in renewable energy, technological development, and business, policy consistency is also needed. Kim Hye-sang, Arirang News.
Now, ahead of the upcoming Korea-ASEAN summits, we're going to turn to the final part of our special 5-part series to take a closer look at South Korea's economic ties with the so-called Mekong countries. Lee Min-sun has this report.
The Mekong countries of Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Myanmar have had ties with regional powers such as China and India since the 1990s and have also maintained close relations with the US and Japan. South Korea has taken up longer to start working with the 5 Mekong countries. In 2011, they first held a foreign ministers meeting in Seoul and announced the so-called Han River Declaration, detailing cooperative measures for mutual prosperity. The declaration selected 6 priority areas of cooperation, including infrastructure, ICT, water resources, and agricultural development. Since then, trade between Korea and the Mekong countries has gradually increased. Last year, the total trade volume was $84.5 billion. Exports from Korea to the Mekong region were worth $58.4 billion, and imports to Korea came to $26.1 billion. The 5 Mekong countries are considered a core partner in President Moon Jae-in's new Southern policy for their development potential that can bring mutual benefits.
South Korea is heavily dependent on China in terms of trade. To reduce its reliance on a particular country, the Mekong region is the best alternative. Korea's economic growth outlook is rapidly falling due to its low growth rate and aging population. We can expect to find new growth engines in these regions.
Korea is one of the countries with the most recent experience of economic development and expertise in infrastructure development. Experts say there are many ways that South Korea can step into the Mekong's underdeveloped areas and help them reach their huge potential.
Hydropower capacity in the Mekong region is estimated to be 250,000 megawatts, but only 19.8% is being utilized. Korea is bringing its construction experience and skills, along with advanced ICT technology, to the region. Hydro resource development improves both the quality of life and economic conditions.
People-to-people exchanges between the two regions have also seen huge growth. The number of travelers between the two regions in 2018 jumped 3 times from 2011. Last year, 5.7 million Koreans visited the Mekong countries, with 1.1 million from the region visiting South Korea. Stronger ties with Mekong countries could also advance inter-Korean relations and build lasting peace on the Korean peninsula, as the 5 countries hold diplomatic relations with both South and North Korea. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
Now, let's take things down to Busan, where all the leaders of the ASEAN members will be gathering in just a couple of days from now. The venue for the summit, Bexco, is putting the final touches to preparations for what promises to be a big event for the city. Our Shin Se-min reports from Busan.
The red carpet has been rolled out to greet the decision makers from all the ASEAN member nations who will soon be descending on South Korea's southern port city for the 2019 ASEAN-Korea Commemorative Summit. At one of the nation's largest convention centers, Bexco, last-minute preparations are underway as the venue prepares to welcome hundreds of participants from South Korea and Southeast Asia, this after hosting the 2014 event. Divided into 3 main areas, Bexco houses summit meeting rooms, a leaders' lounge, press conference halls, and a place where delegations can pray, specially catered to ASEAN's diverse religious populations. And the leaders, who are gathering to celebrate 30 years of dialogue between South Korea and ASEAN, will open doors that'll help them frame their game plan for the next 3 decades.
With the summit expected to attract some 10,000 diplomats, businessmen, and the members of the press from the 11 participating nations, the country's second largest city is looking to cash in big from the influx of people that'll be flooding in just a matter of days from now.
The Busan Development Institute projects the summit will rake in some $42 million for the city and generate more than 400 new jobs. That, in addition to the potential benefits to the city's brand image. On top of the summit meetings, additional events are also taking place at Bexco. From the ASEAN ROK CEO Summit relating to B2B connections, the innovation showcase on future vision for industrial technologies, to beauty and fashion-related events like a fashion week and beauty festival, the commemorative event aims to attract participants from all walks of life. The host broadcaster for the 3-day summit is South Korean public broadcaster KBS, and it will also be beamed live around the world through South Korea's only international English channel, Arirang TV. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Busan.
The United States and China are still struggling to strike a limited trade deal to hopefully end their trade war. However, there may be a fresh glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel as Beijing has invited a U.S. trade delegation to the Chinese capital for more talks. We're yet to know whether that invitation will be accepted. However, for more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Kim Da-mi. So, Da-mi, give us the details.
Mark, China's chief trade negotiator has invited his American counterparts for a fresh round of face-to-face talks. According to Wall Street Journal on Thursday, China's Liu He asked U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin to hold a meeting during a phone call last week. Liu reportedly preferred to set a date before American Thanksgiving, which is next Thursday. While leaving some room for a possible meeting, Lighthizer and Mnuchin didn't immediately accept the request. Sources say it would be burdensome for the American delegation to cross the Pacific Ocean for talks when China provides no clear commitment not to violate intellectual property rights or forcing technology transfer and purchasing agricultural products. But U.S. President Donald Trump says China will have to make a deal he likes, and he's happy for now and is in no rush. Reuters reported Wednesday that the Trump administration faces more demands from China as Beijing presses it for extensive tariff rollbacks. The U.S. plans to impose new 15% tariffs on Chinese goods from next month. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been indicted in a series of corruption cases, including bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Israel's Attorney General said on Thursday that Netanyahu accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars of champagne and cigars from billionaire friends and offered to trade favors with a newspaper publisher. The attorney rejected accusations that his decision was politically motivated.
Law enforcement is not a matter of choice. This is not a matter of right or left. This is not a matter of politics.
Calling the allegations a part of a witch hunt, Netanyahu angrily accused prosecutors of staging an attempted coup.
Tonight, we are witnessing an attempted coup against the Prime Minister, using false accusations and a tainted and biased investigation process.
The indictment does not require Netanyahu to resign. However, it does significantly weaken him at a time when Israel's political system appears to be heading towards a third election in under a year. After 5 days of battles at Hong Kong Polytechnic University, only around 40 Hong Kong protesters remain on the campus. According to the Associated Press on Thursday, at least 23 people surrendered, and over 240 people were charged with crimes against the state on that day. While the standoff between demonstrators and riot police appears to be coming to an end, all eyes are now on whether Hong Kong's local elections, scheduled on Sunday, will take place. Hong Kong pro-democracy protesters, however, argue that the elections should be postponed because their demands for greater democracy have not been met.
Three days have now passed since Korea workers went on an indefinite strike here in South Korea. Train operations have fallen to 82% of the usual rate, causing delays on subway lines 1, 3 and 4. Interval times for the Gyeonggi-Jungang line also increased to more than 30 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes longer than usual, affecting residents in Gyeonggi-do province. During commuting hours, KORAIL plans to put more workers in place to maintain train levels at 90%, those workers being substitute workers, of course. High-speed KTX trains will operate at around 70% and other trains at 60% of their usual levels. The Korean Railway Workers Union said roughly half of its workers are taking part in the strike. South Korea's income disparity narrowed slightly in the third quarter, mostly due to more government support. However, household income for the self-employed actually saw the biggest decline in 16 years due to sluggish demand. Yoon Jung-min reports.
The nominal income gap between the lowest and highest income brackets narrowed in the third quarter for the first time in 4 years, mostly due to increased government support for low-income households. Statistics Korea said on Thursday that households in the bottom 20% income bracket earned an average of $1,168 a month from July to September, up more than 4% on-year. Over the same period, the top 20% earned some $8,335 a month on average, up 0.7% on-year. The agency said the income of the bottom 20% rose in large part due to more government spending such as on public pensions. It's the biggest jump in 7 quarters. The agency added that the country's employment market has started to recover slightly. Last year, the average labor income for the lowest income brackets was down more than 22%, but this year the figure was down only 6%. The government welcomed Thursday's data and said it would continue its income-led growth policy.
President Moon said the figures have been recovering from the second quarter and household income and distribution are even better in third quarter. This clearly reflects the effect of the income-led growth policy.
South Korea's total average monthly household income climbed 2.7% to slightly over $4,100 from July to September. Among the figures, business income for households was down 4.9% to around $746 during the same period, which was the biggest decline since 2003. The statistics agency said the income for self-employed business owners has decreased due to sluggish domestic consumption, and more of them were included in the bottom 20% this year. Households have paid more as taxes during the same period. Spending on taxation, pensions, and similar expenses was up nearly 7% on year. Disposable income for households was also up 1.5%, picking up for the second quarter in a row. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now in tech news, Kakao Corporation, which is the operator of South Korea's dominant mobile messenger app, pretty much everyone uses it, they are to become the largest shareholder of Kakao Bank, which is an internet-only operation. Hong Yu has more on what this means for you, the consumer.
Kakao Corp became the first non-financial entity to become a major shareholder of a bank, in this case Kakao Bank. Since its launch in 2017, the internet-only Kakao Bank attracted customers with slogans emphasizing convenience and innovation. It activated financial trade on mobile phones mainly among people in their 20s and 30s and lowered the access barrier for those with low credit ratings. The internet bank made it easier for people to approach financial products with simple explanations and registration steps. Now, with more than 10 million users to date, Kakao Bank and Kakao Corp are planning to expand its range of financial products.
It is likely that they will create more products such as investment packages with low risk and medium rate credit loans.
With the cooperation of one of Korea's leading IT companies, analysts anticipate the fusion of finance and ICT to gain momentum. Kakao Corp is continuously expanding its business into new sectors such as mobility services, AI speakers, and big data. Such new businesses, along with the bank, can create new services that can be useful for the bank users. And new securities services could be launched, making overseas stock purchases more convenient. Kakao Bank says a detailed plan of its new services will be available next year. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Now, the city of Seoul recently held a special food exhibition called Sweet Seoul to promote Korean desserts in Paris and New York. The pop-up event took place at the Galeries Lafayette department store in Paris from November 15th to the 17th. Sweet Seoul then moved to 2-star Michelin Korean restaurant Jongshik in New York for a 2-day showing from Wednesday local time. For the dessert exhibition, 5 Korean dessert chefs presented their signature dishes on small dining tables called soban.
Good morning. Seasonal indicators show today is 소설, which usually means a little bit of snow with colder temperatures, but instead will be under sunny skies with milder than average temperatures. And this trend will continue into the weekend, but do expect nationwide rain on Sunday. Meanwhile, parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-Bukdo province remain under dry weather alerts. Air quality will also be normal in most regions apart from Sejong City and Chungcheongbuk-do province. Daily highs will rise quickly to the mid to upper teens by the afternoon, while Busan and Jeju could see a high of 20 degrees under plenty of sunshine. Kimjang, the Korean name for the kimchi making season, is approaching. This year's Kimjang season came 4 days later than last year due to milder autumn temperatures. Well, these are the recommended dates to take into account if you plan on making kimchi this year. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. Our next newscast is coming up at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.